You know, when people talk about infidelity, they often jump straight to the scandal, the betrayal, and the chaos. What they skip over is the quiet build-up, the subtle moments when the ground starts to shift under your feet and you don't even realize it's happening. It doesn't always begin with fireworks or crossed boundaries. Sometimes it begins with a conversation that feels too easy, a glance that lingers just a little longer than it should, or a laugh that feels like it belongs to a different life. That's where this story really starts. Not in the obvious, but in the quiet places where we think we're still safe. I met him at a time when everything in my life seemed settled. Married, stable, predictable. The routines were so familiar. They felt like home, but also like walls. You see, comfort has a funny way of disguising itself as fulfillment. Day after day, I would wake up next to a man who knew my favorite coffee, who could anticipate my moods, but somehow the spark that once set us on fire had dimmed to an ember that barely glowed. We were fine, and fine, as I later learned, can be dangerous. Then he showed up. Let's call him David. He wasn't the kind of man who walked into a room and demanded attention. No, his presence was quieter than that. He listened when I spoke, and not the way people pretend to listen while waiting for their turn to talk. His eyes stayed on mine, focused, steady, patient. He asked questions no one else bothered to ask anymore, questions about who I had been. Before marriage wrapped itself around me like a script I forgot I agreed to follow. I didn't think of it as anything unusual at first. Just a friendly co-worker, right? Just a harmless connection in a world where I had started to feel invisible. But slowly, and I mean almost imperceptibly, I realized I was looking forward to seeing him more than I should have. The conversations stretched longer, the smiles lingered, and one day, sitting across from him in that small cafe with light filtering, through the windows in that soft golden way, I heard myself laugh in a way I hadn't in years. It wasn't planned. That's what most people misunderstand. Affairs rarely start with intention. They start with unmet needs and unnoticed voids. And it wasn't even about the physical, not at first. It was about feeling seen, appreciated, alive. When you've gone too long without feeling wanted, not out of duty but out of desire, the first person who gives you that spark feels like a lifeline. And David, with his steady gaze and gentle words, became exactly that. The first time he touched my hand, it was so casual I could have convinced myself it meant nothing. His fingers brushed mine as he handed me something. But the electricity was undeniable, a jolt that went straight through me, reminding me of something I hadn't even realized I missed, that feeling of being wanted without obligation. We didn't cross any lines that day, not officially, but in hindsight, emotional lines had already blurred. I started sharing more than I should have, thoughts, frustrations, dreams I had tucked away long ago. He listened. Always listened. And eventually the line between listening and longing disappeared altogether. I remember the day I told him I couldn't do it anymore, that I had to pull back, that we were heading into dangerous territory and I couldn't jeopardize everything I had built. His face didn't change much, but his eyes, they darkened slightly, like the sky before a storm. He said nothing at first, just sat there quietly, making space for the weight of my words. And then, finally, he leaned forward and said, "If you ask me to stop, I will, but only if that's what you truly want, not because you think you have to." I wish I could say I stood up and walked away. I wish I could say I chose the safe road, the predictable one. But in that moment, with his voice so calm and so sure, I felt a gravity I couldn't fight anymore. I told him I didn't want him to stop. I begged him not to stop making me feel alive, not to stop looking at me like I was more than just a wife or a routine or someone to check off a list. I told him quietly and desperately that I needed this, and he never stopped. From that moment, everything changed. The meetings became secretive. The touches became deliberate. We crossed lines we had both tried so hard to respect. And while there was guilt, of course there was guilt, there was also a rush that drowned out everything else. It wasn't about rebellion. It wasn't even about lust alone. It was about reclaiming something we both thought we had lost. Vitality, connection, presence. It's easy to judge from the outside. Easy to paint the picture in black and white. But the reality is that infidelity lives in the gray areas, the spaces between duty and desire, between obligation and authenticity. We weren't trying to destroy anything. We were trying to breathe again, trying to feel like ourselves again. But here's the thing about secrets. They don't stay buried forever. Eventually, cracks start to show. You get careless, or maybe just tired of hiding. And one day, my husband found a message he wasn't meant to see. It wasn't explicit, but it was enough for him to know. Enough to collapse the world we had built together. That confrontation was nothing like I expected. No yelling, no accusations thrown like daggers, just silence, and disappointment so heavy it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. The pain in his eyes said everything. In the weeks that followed, the aftermath unfolded in slow motion. Counseling sessions, late-night conversations that felt more like autopsies than healing. I had to face not just what I had done, but why I had done it. And that's the uncomfortable part most people avoid. It's not enough to say, I made a mistake. You have to dig into the deeper truth. What emptiness allowed that mistake to take root? David and I ended things soon after. It wasn't sustainable, not with so much wreckage behind us. And as much as he had meant to me in those moments, the truth is, what we built together was born out of unmet needs, not a stable foundation. It couldn't last. Looking back now, years later, I don't tell this story to justify what happened. I tell it because it's real, because life, love, and loyalty aren't as simple as we pretend they are. It's easy to sit on the outside and declare you'd never cross a line like that, until you're standing at the edge, starved for something you didn't even realize you were missing, and someone offers it to you with open hands. What I learned is this: infidelity isn't just about the betrayal of a partner. It's often about betrayal of ourselves first. The parts of us we silence, neglect, or ignore for the sake of keeping everything running smoothly. It's about what happens when we stop tending to the relationship, not just with our partner, but with ourselves. I won't romanticize what happened. It hurts people, it fractured trust, but it also forced me to confront hard truths about connection, honesty, and what it means to feel fully alive in a relationship. If anything, it taught me to speak up sooner, to recognize when I'm drifting before I've drifted so far that coming back feels impossible. And for anyone listening who's found themselves in a similar gray area, whether on the edge of a boundary or already across it, I'll say this: pay attention to what's missing long before someone else offers to fill it. Pay attention to the quiet ways you start to disappear in your own life. And if you need something, say it out loud to the person you committed to yourself, because silence, more than anything else, is where stories like mine are born. That's the story. No glamour, no excuses, just truth. The kind that lingers, long after the spark fades, long after the dust settles.